So this slide presentation that I want to share with WOW Philippines, and so that way you can help us regenerate this when we take this presentation to the CMEO or the international level, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because you have a strong regenerative team in the Philippines. It's, this presentation is called Effective Collaboration, and the approach is to look at low technology network for the highest impact and connection. And this is an
Okay.
important uh, research effort that has been evolving throughout the years. And actually, this was done in the early days of Silicon Valley when we didn't have a lot of high level technology. And so to integrate it into the school system, we had to keep things very simple. And we had to keep things from an interdisciplinary point of view. But now, 15, 20 years later, in the post-industrial or in the industry 4.0 here in Southeast Asia, we are now much more robust in the low tech. And when I say low tech, I'm talking about the apps that are available on a small mobile phone. Is as powerful as computing that we had in the old days. So I want to start out with this infographic, because this infographic will give you the quick overall discussion of what I want to share. And please jump in when you need, because I want this to be an exchange between WOW Philippines and WOW Bali.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Can I go back a little bit on the low tech apps you were referring to? Is there a specific app?
okay, we're going to go right into it right now. So it's going to
Okay.
start here with, as you can see right here, this is where we are, which is starting out with the simple app. And then from each step of the way, and I will explain to you the different evolution of the phases as a community evolved together. And I will share with you the Foresight Institute, the Hive Mind Collaborative Network, and some of the projects they're working on, as well as explain to you about our framework and interdisciplinary uh, dynamic of celebration program. So the goal is to take this spiral journey uh, in the process of simple, effective solution to build collaborative networks. And these collaborative network is goal are to develop sustainable and regenerative outcomes and deliverable, all starting by connecting with self. Yeah, and that is the celebration framework. It's saying that we know that we must return to self to be able to connect to the macro, right? Start out at the micro to connect to the macro. So this is this holistic framework that will show you how to do this. So coming in here, like I said, the first question that you had right away, which everybody always asks me, what are the apps, Haidai? Don't waste time. Tell me the apps. And so a lot of these are, of course, mobile apps because they're very easy to use and very easy to share. And and most of these apps can be self-taught. We don't need to teach a lot of it, or they can be taught within the 20-minute learning exchange. And so, but more importantly, in the second point here is that they must be a collective input. This is where you start the collective input. It's not as simple as, oh yeah, I'm using Google's Gmail and I'm using Slack and I'm using Zoom and you need to get onto the bandwagon. No, this is the time when we start connecting with each other through social emotional learning and say, hey, which one do you like to use? Oh, you like Yahoo Mail. Why? Why you like Yahoo Mail? And then connecting to like the emotional connection they have with Yahoo Mail. Oh, I like it because I like it because my family's on there. Oh, I like it because this is where like in the U.S. I don't use Facebook for collaborative network. The Americans would laugh at me. But in Asia I use Facebook because every academic I know is on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so there's different community, or some community uses Instagram. and they say, oh my God, you use Facebook, you're old school. But like I said, so the simple app and the collective input to define this is very important, and document this, because this documentation of how you choose these dynamic and contextual learning application is the beginning of how we share through social emotional learning. You follow me?
Yeah.
It seems like a very simple step, but it isn't. Because nowadays, our phone is an emotional connection to us. Like recently, I lost my Samsung and I had to go back to my iPhone, and it's like losing a girlfriend. I have on here that I use in a certain way, and now I can't because I have to change the device. So it's very important that we use this simple app technology to connect dynamically to our learning exchange. Okay, I talk about social emotional learning, and to me, this is such an old hat. I will also, when we post this up, I will add all the link of all the social emotional learning presentation that I do here in Southeast Asia, different ministry, for CMEO, for UNICEF, for all the research consortium. But the basics of social emotional learning through this research to the World Economic Forum, all right? These are economic people realizing that it's not about just logic and numbers and calculated economic, but it's about the competency and the character quality of a person and how it connects to critical thinking, creativity, communication, and collaboration, all the way to curiosity, initiative, and grit and adaptability. All these leadership and social cultural awareness of social emotional learning is an important aspect. So if you don't know this framework, take the time and maybe to use this, if no one knows it in your initial group, take this time to make this one of the topic of discussion.
Okay. In the previous slide, you mentioned about inputs.
Yeah.
Something like collective input for dynamic and contextual learning, and then we move to talking about the core competencies for the 21st century learning. Are these what are these? Are these social and emotional skills among the inputs that we should be learning about?
Yeah, I think that here, we should encourage play-based learning, right? So make sure that these collaborative network is not about these, oh my God, and of course, it's hard because to the nerds, to the hyper nerds and the hyper geeks, play is getting super geeky and super nerdy. But like I said, depending on your collaborative network that you're working with, try to encourage play. Try to break down learning into smaller pieces. Try to create a safe environment for the collaborative exchange. Develop the growth of the mindset. Foster the nurturing relationship. And this starts right at what tools are we using? Don't just assume that, okay, I use Google Mail and Slack and Zoom, and no. What do you think about? Oh, I love Zoom. Or, I like Skype because Skype is more personable. It's simple, and I like smaller network, these are things that you need to talk about and use it to foster and nurture a relationship and allowing time for people to focus, these are the process, but once you are really connected at this, social emotional connection through character quality and competency, then it's really tight. And it's so important right now because we don't get to have face to face. We don't have like in the old days, in the old days.
Mhm.
you know. Um,
You
Nowadays,
talk about it like it's years ago, that we
like,
shifted to online.
it seems
But
like,
it's actually just, so recent.
yeah, it's crazy, I used to think that fashion and music and and film are the fastest way to transformation of a culture. Well, here is the most fastest. Okay, so what is it? And I think a lot of it is, and I'll go into why it is the most transformative um, current global situation right now, and why we all are immediately in this moment bonding. So like I said, go through these things, and they're all here,
Yeah.
and very easy to look at it, and use this as a discussion. Okay, use this slide as a discussion group in the beginning, so that way you can have a body of information that you're sharing. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so then I talk about the first, once you define the technology, the app is moving to the phases of the first couple of phases. And I didn't update this slide, but let's go back to here. I talked about the first two phases are phases in creative autonomy, right? I think a human-centered approach is to allow the people to be creative, to have their own creative autonomy. Even if you already have the framework mapped out, even if you have the vision very clear, it's still allowing people to contribute, collaborate towards the vision, rather than you or the visionary dictating where it needs to go. Two is we talk about multiple intelligence, and I'll explain to you the difference between multiple intelligence in the form of neural dynamic programming. Uh, so
Mm-hmm.
we will talk back. So in the phases of integration, the first phase you must have is you must have a great vision for a collaborative network. What are we coming together for? Like most of my vision here that I'm working at the ground floor over here is, okay, we got a lot of hotels, and how do we get these hotels and keep the staff and be able to apply the staff toward a sustainable and regenerative model, so that way we can develop sustainable community, resilient, sustainable community in these resorts, okay, in these hotel resorts, and 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 be able to foster sustainability and still be able to uh, 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 collaborate towards the future, which is ecotourism or sustainable tourism. So the vision has to be wow enough, for them to say, yeah, okay, I need this. I got 100+ employees in my resort, and I'm still keeping them on pay or half pay, and we need to do something, to sustain. So having a great vision is important. Core group initiative must have regenerative outcome. Okay, and what this means is, what is
Mm-hmm.
not about just getting together and killing time or talking. This is like, what is the outcome? Let's talk about that, and if the outcome could be simple as an output, the simple could be an as simple as a game plan, so that way we can approach the community. Because right now we all have to work virtually, and because of social distancing, I can't go out there and build a farm, but I can make
Yeah.
the plan to be dynamic. So when after this COVID and social distancing, or I can have a plan that we're doing right now where people can come at certain hours to work on the farm. So you got 2 hours, and then we divide up the plot, okay, and so you can start sharing the plot to be able to work together at different times. So you're working on the same piece of land, just at different times. I'll show you some pictures of that.
Yeah. Yeah, this can be applied to any initiative, right?
Oh,
Within a collaborative network,
any
like
class.
setting about, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
right now I'm trying to inspire the Miss Philippines, Miss Philippine Earth. I'm also inspiring
mm-hmm,
a healing, a creative healing community who's using songs and music and artwork, because all these are still of these medium are still uh, non-interactive and non-collaborative and non-regenerative.
yeah,
So we need to migrate towards something that is more collaborative and regenerative. Open human-centered design for optimum creative autonomy. Okay, this is key because at the end of the day, like Dr. Joel from Singapore says, this is about developing creative confidence.
confidence, yeah,
Creative autonomy is not just giving you the freedom to do whatever the heck you want. This is nurturing your autonomy so that way you have confidence in our community. You have confidence in the current situation at hand, which is stripping us of our confidence. I'm so tired of all the media scaring us. I'm so tired of everybody posting things that are just, doesn't promote confidence. Even subconsciously, it eats away at us. It takes away our confidence.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
like most of the information that we have right now about our present, global condition are so disempowering, I guess. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that, but we don't really have, um, you know, enough information for us to make proper decisions at this point, whether individually or, as a community, as
Yeah.
a group. I guess that's what we need right now within our small communities, creative confidence. I think even with students who have overnight, shifted from going to school into, online learning models that they're using right now. I guess we need to have more, you know, empowerment at every level.
Well, same. This is that start. This framework should be started inside the school. Let the children,
Mm-hmm.
let the student talk about what is it that they want to learn. Let the children have the creative autonomy to choose what is important for them, and get them on this integration, this effective collaboration at first. Then we can migrate once they get all on the uh, uh, social emotional connection and the simple technology and the effective collaboration. Then we can migrate into
Mm-hmm.
a more focused education, or return to the focused education that I know that ministry wants to do. Because one of the things
Yeah.
that what I'm seeing here, and I share this right away, is in San Francisco, this is the mobility capital of the world. I came from San Francisco. I created these applications from San Francisco. All the technology, this is where they grow this stuff. But yet the education department, and this is the public school education department in San Francisco, says let's give all our students the next semester A's. Why? Well, this is the fastest way to give them creative confidence. You can't fail. Just let's get together. Let's start sharing. Let's use the technology. Let's use the tool. Let's socially, emotionally connect. Because you all got A's. Now with an A, what do you want?
Yeah.
Now what you want to do with you that now that you have an A in your class? I mean, imagine, like you're a student and you got like I have an A, man. So okay, now what do I now what I want to learn? I want to share. So uh, uh, this is okay. Let's have the openness for conceptual design, and then but the openness is not enough. You must have the ability for evolutionary design thinking, and this is the hardest part. Everybody's open to stuff, but do you have the ability to do it? And this is where we need to do even a separate workshop on evolutionary design thinking. How do we look at something and how does it evolve? Does our tool that we chose today evolve? And then, does our program that we chose yesterday evolve? Does the output that we said that we were going to produce, does that evolve? Yes, yes, yes. Make it everything an evolution. Yeah? So this is very hard because, like I said, from a ministry, from, a Department of Education, from like big organization, we need to set things in stone so we can keep the wheel churning. But at this point in time, and maybe you talk it as a group, this is the beginning of a relationship. It's like when you first meet someone, you're not going to tell them, hey, you got to do this and you got to do this to be my friend. Maybe the first 6 months you allow it to be. This is the same way. And this is even harder because you're doing it online. There's a lot to connect. So the ability to have evolutionary design thinking and support, and then you must have multi and interdisciplinary stakeholders in your collaborative network. Do not have interdisciplinary stakeholders. It's not going to work. You got to get out of, and like I said, when I'm, working with these like media arts or the art group, it's great because you got the musician, you got the dancers, you got the different collaborative network. Or same with the farmers, they have different interdisciplinaries. But inside of, like a classroom, a monodisciplinary classroom, it's a lot more difficult, right? I teach math or I teach one discipline. How do I get interdisciplinary? So this is where you invite other departments to come together, in your collaborative network, to look at solutions, to look at real sustainable solutions. Because we talked about this before. Interdisciplinary naturally creates sustainability. Okay? So then talking about dynamic people with multiple intelligence. This is important. Bring in media people. Bring in hyper creative people that think not only in just one art medium. Because why a lot of our process here is that we're going to integrate from a multiple intelligence point of view is what I call a neurodynamic programming. Think of it as neuro-linguistic programming. Everybody knows neuro-linguistic programming, how we're programmed to the words that are being used. So what I did is I took the reverse engineer of neuro-linguistic programming and reversed it. Instead of trying to use modalities and programs to overcome the linguistic programming, why don't we integrate in the multiple intelligence and change the neurodynamic programming? So that way we're not doing like, we're not just talking and looping the language and mental masturbate the language so that way you can overcome. But let's move into the multiple intelligence modality, the visual, the music, the kinesthetic, the nature intelligence is a big one. When you connect to nature intelligence, it's a big one. Or interpersonal intelligence or intrapersonal. If you don't know about this, like I said, that could be a whole separate course or a workshop in itself. But if you look up Howard Gardner or you Google multiple intelligence, you get it. Because why? We are all multiple intelligence beings. It wasn't until the education that drive us down to the logical and the literal because of the macro national thinking that we stuck. But otherwise, so like I said, multiple intelligence people to be included. Even if you just have an advisor to be a part of your collaborative network, it's key. So here's some sample of the phases. And this is based on the hive mind of Foresight Institute. And this is one that I am a part of. And I, you know, whether they are organic or not, they simulate the collaborative network to be hyper-organic. You know, they always telling us, oh, we're making this up along the way.
Okay.
But when you look at it from a systemic point of view, like, you know, from the meta point of view, the big picture point of view, then you start seeing their program. Like one, cultivating a long-term, they start out with cultivating a long-term humane long-term culture. What this does, this is macro thinking, right? Big picture thinking. So that's how we can dream together, right? Then we move into existential hope. And this is more personalized now, right? It's like the long-term, humane long-term culture, but it's through my perspective.
Okay.
So it went from the macro to the micro. You see this?
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes to, okay, how do we champion the civic community? Now, from the micro to the macro to the regenerative, right? How do we spread this to the community? And into the next step, which is how do we advance the high impact science and technology? Because that stuff you can prove. These are the processes you can prove. These are the processes that is somewhat, well, these are the processes that are somewhat accountable. You know, I was sharing with you today about a resonance, you know, entanglement and resonance. And of course, this hasn't been proven, but scientifically, not completely. Well, there's some work, but these kind of stuff, I think it's Then human flourishing. Okay. And then it goes, then it goes to reward ourselves. And how do we make something sacred? So what do you see here? What do you see that they're doing here? They're cultivating social connecting from the self to the community to the divinity, right? In Bali, we call it Trihita Karana. But we're doing this everywhere, right? We can integrate this everywhere. So we're also looking at the impact of how does it connect to the people and places and things of our life, right? The noun that I call it, right? But more importantly, it's like how you heal the body. You do contrast. Okay? You do this contrast in the macro to the micro, and I'll explain more later about that. So if you want to look at the group, the collaborative network group, you can look at the basic information architecture. You can look at, this is where we register to participate. This is where you download the application. This is, how you add to the calendar. This is how you receive mail. Then you move into the hive mind. This is just a sample, that I put together from the hive mind information architecture. But, if you look at it, they just look like basic information architecture, right? And how you move through the information and how you download the Slack, how you read the Slack, how you participate in Zoom. It's just very simple, right? There's no not much to be said about the information architecture. And like I said, it's not so important what is the correct information architecture. It's more important that we practice social emotional learning in choosing together as a community, and then documenting it so it's regenerative. So that way, as people come in to the different room or different document or the different Google sheet, they can see exactly what is being kept. Okay? But from a collaborative, effective network, I don't look at this, or we don't look at this as an information map. We look at it as an intelligence map. So what area deals with logical? What area is more visual? What area is more audio? What area it promote action and kinesthetic? What area is introspective learning? What area is, extra personal intelligence learning? Because then when you look at it this way, it's not just information going in and out, but you're looking at a more holistic approach to connecting to this community. It's like you're walking into a house, you might say, oh, all I see is the room, a door, and a window. But to the architect, the window is to the west for the morning sun. The door is from the north.
Yeah.
Behind the walls are electricity and plumbing. So if you're there, it's easier to plug in. It's like, you go to a house, especially here in Asia, you're like, where's the plug? And you're like, why is the plug there? When am I going to use the plug there, And it's the same with information architecture, You got to look at it from a more, robust, a bonding structure, a social emotional learning structure. Which is, like I said, in our, and a lot of this is like, nowadays, like when they teach social emotional learning, they teach it through the psychological nature of the human rather than the cultural concept and the cultural heritage. Because for us, it's already built in. When we eat with chopsticks, or in the Balinese, we eat with the hand, that's social emotional. That's social. It's not just social emotional learning. It's not just from the mind, but it's from every action. So same with this information structure. It needs to come from a multiple intelligence approach. Yeah. And at first, like I said, this is where maybe you bring in an advisor to look at your collaborative network. This is where WOW, our knowledge of social emotional learning and multiple intelligence can be an advisor to these groups. We can come in and say, okay, where are you? What's the macro? What's the micro? Okay. Why are you putting the electric power right there? That don't work. Think social emotion, think human-centered design. Okay, so this is where WOW can really help collaborative network, to start building their effective collaboration. And here's an example, structure comparison. And then I'm learning this from working with a lot of, like Asia ministry, organization where they're very top down. And the connection is of power. I'm the boss. I pay you. And rather than the more, organic DNA structure, where it's connection, the bond is more important than the status. What's the bond? What's the social emotional connection? What's the multiple intelligence connection? How is it effective? How does it make you feel good? Because in this current time, that's one of the biggest thing I learned from starting the first online high school in Hawaii and developing learning through an online virtual. People can fake things a lot better. They can like pretend like everything is okay a lot better virtually. And the bond is not really there. In work, you got to go to work. The bond is you show up at work. There's only so much you can fake because you're sitting in the job or you're sitting in the school, you're sitting in the collaboration. You can't fake it. But virtually, I'm sitting down here in my underwear. I'm only wearing a top that looks nice. Just kidding. I don't want you to visualize that. But you know what I mean? We can, in the virtual space of the bonding and building these architecture, these structural architecture bonding has to be clear where these structural, the top-down power doesn't work. No, I'm not saying that doesn't work when the time comes. They both are good. But one of them is dynamic and one of them is creative. And right now we need to be dynamic and creative with our collaborative network. Yeah. So this brings us, okay, when you want to be collaborative, you want to be creative, and you want to be dynamic, this is our framework. Recently, I presented to the Teacher Federation here in Bali, because a lot of these development for social emotional learning through scalable technology, Industry 4.0 is huge for them. I mean, it's very hard for the Balinese, harder for the Balinese, I think, than anybody, because they're used to being very face-to-face. You know, their language is very minimal, and they don't even have future tense and past tense. And that's why they can carve a piece of wood 1,000 times and not get bored. Because logical and literal intelligence is not as powerful as their, kinesthetic and visual and music intelligence, which is higher intelligence. It's just not regenerative, not as regenerative. Smaller micro-governance community, Banjar, works. But bigger is very hard because it's not logical and literal like, modern education. Or, that's why that small little island called the UK can govern 90% of the planet at one time. It's because of the language. Language and logical and literal intelligence is more regenerative, so it's easier for somebody, somewhere to control a community if we force them to all use language. So this framework goes into more of that dynamic, and if you learn this framework, then you can evolve this framework inside your collaborative network, and you'll see how it does it. So the first one is understanding this micro to macro. At the micro level, it's about relatedness. Well, how do I feel? It's about more, soft skill. It's not about logic. But most education is taught at the national level, right? National control, national mandate curriculum. So we can only push the ideal. And this goes deep. I mean, we can go deep into this because the macro, most of our stress and most of our suffering come from the macro. Most of the stress and feeling we're thinking right now in the COVID time are all macro ideas of the virus. Because at the micro level, we're eating the same, we're at home more, which technically on a vacation. But at the macro level, we're stressed. Oh my God, what am I going to do tomorrow? Oh my God, what are we going to do? This virus spread. Oh my God, and so by putting on the mask and making us wash our hands, I'm not saying that it's not important. That affects our micro. The macro now is affecting our micro. So if you stay at home, it's going to feel better, but this drives people crazy. So you must know this micro focus in your collaborative network. Yeah? Same, the holistic mindset. This is a structure where we connect to everything that's important to you, to the self. First, your aesthetics, your sensory. Okay? From your sight to your sound, your smell. When you connect to your community, connect through these holistic mindset. Because this deals with the people and places of things. Don't just ask a person how they think in your collaborative network. Give them connection so that way, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? Why? Because what you're doing, you're not wasting time. You're connecting with people at a very relatedness, a very micro connection. That's why I asked you earlier, how hot is it? Because automatically your mind's like, oh my God, it's almost 50 Celsius. See? Now you got out of your mind and you're here, you're in the body, you're in the heat. So, you know, the aesthetic to connection is a big aspect of the dynamic. Same with perceptual, memory, association, and preferences. These things are also very important in connection. Okay? So
Yeah.
do exercise in your collaborative network that connects to memory. Hey, do you remember? When was it like this? Can we associate this time with another time? And then go into their preferences. Leave a space for people to express their preferences. And I think a lot of this social media that we're seeing out there, that of course is driving a lot of people upset, they're people are just expressing themselves. They want to share their preference. So they post these crazy things and they talk crazy stuff. Just imagine if we were doing in the same pandemic and we didn't have this ability to connect, and you were at home without your smartphone and a network. Oh my God! Imagine pandemic in the early 1900s. You know. So same with social and cultural. We need to connect into people's social and cultural on your network. And like I said, I'll go deep into this, and we'll go deep on another presentation. And then of course nature. You know, we do a lot of farming projects at home. Why? It connects to nature, and it's more holistic. So like I said, these are. What you saw there was the wheel of connection. They're the highest emotional connection with self. So from your perceptual, which is, your memory, association, and preference, the aesthetic, which is what I talked about, sight, sound, your social, cultural, your environment, your settlement, your enclosure, your celebration. These are important, and then of course the nature. All these aspects are very important. You're just returning everybody on the same page. Let's get everybody on the same page. Before we connect anywhere else, let's be on the same page of this. These are the things that we're celebrating. These are the things that are important to us as a human species. Then here we move into the different disciplinary, or what I call the core disciplinary. And we chose this disciplinary because they're connected to our holistic connection toward our cognitive process. And when we connect to this cognitive process through these disciplinary, then we can nurture these multiple intelligence, and we can connect them at the social emotional level, and then we can also naturally develop empathy, naturally develop sustainability. Okay, naturally become dynamic wellness. Dynamic wellness is the outcome of these interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Okay. So the interdisciplinary framework is broken down as the creative art. What does it do? It talks about your personal dynamic. It connects you at your creative response. It connects you at the feeling and reflection. It connects you with flow. It connects you with sustainable and emotional learning. Each one of these interdisciplinary have a different dynamic. From collaborative to design thinking. New media is about design thinking. New media is about collaboration. I don't need to talk about collaboration with you. I say, let's do a collaborative project. Who would do music? Who would do performance? Who would, do video? Who would do song, naturally we collaborate. You know, new media is naturally regenerative. Right? It naturally connects at the social emotion. Okay? Same with permaculture. The permaculture goes even deeper than that. It goes to the symbiotic dynamic. It goes to your nature intelligence, survival intelligence at the cellular levels. Okay? It goes to ecosystem design thinking. So you're not just thinking about yourself and about my intelligence, but I'm thinking about the whole ecosystem. How do we find balance in all of it? And how do we be integrative? And how do we co-regenerate together? All this is through, you know, permaculture disciplinary. Same with action learning, how to learn for yourself, how to be active in your collaborative intelligence, how to connect at the interpersonal, okay, to know yourself, how to connect that evolutionary design thinking, okay. You know, all these are all aspects of different, and motivational art. This is very key. How do you motivate yourself? What is the, you know, intrapersonal? How do you motivate? You know what's the number one motivation, Miss Kim? People. People are the number one motivation. We inspire each other. We inspire each other. How you act will inspire me. How you respond will inspire me. So with motivational, it's about building relationship. It's about, you know, your own personal development, but with other people. Okay? So like in all this, like I said, at the core of all this is social emotional connection or social emotional learning. All these. Okay, I'm going to skip the art, and I'm going to skip the creative arts and the new media. I think those are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there's a lot of modalities that I can show you guys in those, but since I'm limited on getting the point across to you, I'm going to go to, you know, the permaculture. You know, nature has a lot to teach us. This is from the permaculture organization. It's a nice flow chart that talks about nature has a lot to teach us, you know, and so if we go into teaching how to sustain yourself off the land or off of a permaculture technique, then it can teach us just about everything. It's dynamic and it's hyper contextual, you know. If you look at, you know, all this, you know. You know, observe and interact, you know, catch and store energy, you know, obtain a yield, apply self-regulation, use value, you know, renewable resource, produce no waste, design patterns, design from patterns in nature to develop, you know, integrate rather than segregate, okay? Looking at more slower and minimize the solution, you know, looking at like the value of diversity, you know, all these are essential to what is needed right now. And nature can teach us. You know, we're developing a program right now using hydroponic solutions. I'm breaking down these things so you can build your own hydroponic. You know, you can go out and build it and then use it to teach a class and use the permaculture, you know, process to teach everything.
Yeah.
This is like hyper dynamic, okay? And it's something that, you know, that can be regenerative. And we can, I'm creating a program right now for the teachers so that way they can market and use the classroom to teach the classroom about effective collaboration. And also, you know, be able to, you know, regenerate this through their community. You know, instead of selling scholastic books, you know, remember when we were kids, we would have a magazine, we go home, we buy the scholastic books, right? I think the future, it's not going to be books that we're going to be buying. It's going to be like farming and food security rather than knowledge security. You know, like you get this little pamphlet to take home and say, hey, we need a warm compost uh, package, or we're going to need an aquaponic package, or, you know, to sustain ourselves. And I think we really need to look into these things. I think it's going to be, you know, looking from the APO agriculture report. I don't know if you saw that, but food security is going to be huge. And I don't personally think the farmer is going to be able to do it all by themselves. So then also, you know, helping them integrate all the different interdisciplinary into action learning, the creative art, to teach, you know, creative response, permaculture, new media for regeneration, to what I call motivational art. What motivates you? You know, how do you develop that? You know, which is develop a passion and curiosity. I think, you know, education, you know, like has numbed it out of us. You know, what is what's Sir Robin? No, Sir.
Ken
Sir
Robin.
Yeah. You know how we need to bring in this motivational arts back into education, and I think now is that time, because, like I said, they're virtual, and if they don't have a motivational art wherever they're at, they're not going to be motivated. You know, motivation. I think excellence is a habit. It's not it's not a skill. Excellence becomes a habit, and if you don't have a motivational art that is a habit, most likely you won't be able to reach excellence. You know, I've spent a lot of years in developing my personal excellence, and I come to realize that I can't stop doing it. You know, it's a habit. You gotta push it. These are 3 wisdom models that I'm going to go through really quick. They're pretty much self-explanatory. Move from logical and literal intelligence to multiple intelligence. Move from just skill learning to imagination. Okay? Move from your collaborative network from just these are the truth to what is the imagination? If we were to dream together in our collaborative network, what would it be? And don't just dream from the logical and literal, because, you know, we're online, it's easy to type. Send in visuals, send in music, send in performance that they like, even if it's not their own. Share that. The best visual, the best music, the best performance, because it gets the community, your collaborative community, into a multiple intelligence and connecting that intuition. Oh yeah, I like that, or I don't like it, rather than the skill and the knowledge and the logic, because then wisdom naturally gets developed. Same here with the process. Move them these collaborative network where it's just you direct them. Find ways to inspire them to direct themselves, and this is very hard, because a lot of what I'm seeing in a lot of my community is that they're kind of trying to control the, because they're afraid people are spamming. They're afraid of people spamming their agenda, because they leave no room. Even in the questionnaire, they're limiting the questionnaire, and I think I'm not saying that it isn't important to have that focus, but I think there must be room to allow people to be self-directed, so they have the ownership of that collaborative network. So that way they have connection to their own experience. So inside they have the water cooler area where you come there and you can say whatever you want. You know, or you know, a creative area where you can input. So that way they can be a little bit, you know, allow the community to create positive action and be self-motivated. Okay, I think this is, like I said, and this is where WOW Philippines and and our mentors from our WOW groups can come in and support them. And this is where this is what, I'm going to need you to share this with your team, so that way we can train your team in the Philippines. Okay, so we're down to the simple model, and this is the most important model out of the three model. Is the retention. And this is key. And why is it key? Because one, we're not producing learners or learning exchange. That's not what our collaborative network is doing. We're not just developing collaborative learning exchange. We're developing collaborators. And then higher than collaborators, we're developing mentors. Okay? And these mentors will become regenerative part of our community. Okay? So these collaborative network is not just about sharing exchange. The core initiative of this is to regenerate. And same, we're not just, just sharing, first you're just sharing music, but later on we will compile this into full digital output. And the output is not only just for interactivity, but and for social media, but it become extension program to the community. And this part is very important, and this is how we gauge accountability. My accountability is not what you share to our collaborative network. My accountability is about how you participate in regenerating what we share. This is I think a lot of collaborative network forget is that I just learned for me and then that's it. No, there's no grade. There's no, there's no way to create a rubric of the, a qualified outcome, or the qualified exchange. Outcome in regeneration is the only way I know this is a healthy regeneration. This is collaborative network is working. It's that we are producing something, and you're, from WOW Bali to WOW Philippines, now you're doing it, and you don't need us. You take the ball and you run with it, and then hopefully you get other people to do the same. And that's the dynamic of collaborative network. They're more modularized and dynamic in regeneration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I said, that moves us into expectation. Scalable output and outcome and deliverable for extension programs to the community. If our collaborative network, we spend all this time connecting and it doesn't produce some kind of outcome to connected to the community, then this effective collaborative network that we're building is not going to be effective for our growing community. So, like I said, if you don't know what that output and outcome should be, maybe the basics are to co-publish, article together from all the input, or produce it for publication, or create online module. My big thing is focusing on apps. Like, how do I get all these collaborative network information and sharing into creating apps for you guys to regenerate. And that's the expectation that we can see right now. This is what we can see. But, some of my collaborative network with the farming, well, we're going to have fully sustainable, food security community. That's the outcome. So we can feed the community with, and then later on be able to feed the community. And if I can get, my dream, if I can get all of Bali and all the different resorts to come together and create the sustainable regenerative center, then wow, that's really dynamic. But right now, through this effective collaboration, through simple technology, we can initiate that now during lockdown, during isolation. We can start this connection because a lot of the farmers that I have here in Bali is like, oh well, let's wait until COVID is over. So
Oh, I see.
you know, this is why I created this. I created this collaborative, effective network is so that way the farmers can start mobilizing. That way, we can modularize even, farming time and farming days for people to come and collaborate. This is perfect
Yeah.
for your ecotourism community up there. At the regional level, you can use it to develop collaborative network for them to, because right now they're probably telling you all the same. Oh, we'll just do our thing and wait. Through this collaborative network, through simple technology, you can start mobilizing them. So that's it for today's. Here, this was published in 2018. Where we presented, where, this type of action research, this modular, approach that I'm talking with you between intelligence, creativity, and well-being, and through action research, can develop scientific evidence in everyday work life. So now we're using the same structure of action research through creativity, intelligence, and well-being, through mobile apps, mobile app development. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is presented with CMEO CSIP in 2018, and it was published by the Asian Society of Teachers for Research. So we've been prepared for this for a long time. We've talked about this. What we've been prepared for in all of our smart center development, from ridge to reef. All of our, centers are developed for regenerative development. But right now, we cannot even get into the regenerative center, and we're stuck at the regenerative collaborative network through mobile apps and virtual space. So we're almost there. But I think it's still a great time to use this technology to be able to connect with them. To develop governance community, we to build resilient community, we got these 10 cycles. And I was include this in the presentation, but I just didn't want to get too much. But identify the hotspot of the community and the key player. Facilitate the participatory community and multi-stakeholder. Recognize the strength and leverage point of each of the fourth dimension. Right? When I talk about each of the fourth dimension, I'm talking about multiple intelligence. I'm talking about ecosystem design thinking. I'm talking about not just, logical and literal mindset, but social emotional mindset. And then I talk about, how do we co-create a resilient plan? What does that mean, from your community? And so you might start with this 10 cycle, right? And then talk about, how do you inform the local district authority to help you with you? And you're already there. You got the local government supporting you. And here's the hardest part is to act and implement change in the behavior, and the norm of the infrastructure. You know, that's the hardest part because they have to know that they must have to already take the leap of faith that we're no longer in the norm. And most of us are in the middle. We're still waiting for everything to go back so we can go to work, go to our school. And we're not accepting this is the new norm. So how to create so they can implement the new changes in behavior. You know, in Bali we use the calendar, so we have this calendar, Warika calendar, which is, they've been using, for the 1,000 years to connect with their ceremony and celebration and to grow food. So they know how to keep moving, evolving. But most of us are stuck in waiting for the old one to come back, Yeah. We draw lesson from the that can produce practical solution. And like I said, practical solution like this. This is simple. You're already using the phone. You're already using social media. What's the difference? Let's take that next level so that we can build multi-stakeholder and alliance, and create a resilience plan for your community. You already have WOW Philippines already have that in place with the ecotourism, initiative you're creating. You know how to formulate the action resilience at the national level, so that way the government will support you. How to bring forward adaptive policy, so that way, we can move ahead at the government level, creating policy. So you guys are already there. You already have all the pieces. That's why this tool will help you develop it in a effective way. In this is that I want to share with you is the, especially your group, because everybody right now is so used to economic, right?
Yeah.
These are, I'm telling the farmers, there's different form of capital. There's financial capital.
Yeah.
And then there's social capital, relationship. There's also material
relationships, yes.
Right? Natural resource. A lot of people offering land, pools, human capital. All WOW center, from the lake to the forest to the organic farming to the resort. A different form of capital. There's no money involved. Each center, collaborative partner is offering a different form of capital, intellectual. Experiential capital. This is where WOW needs to come in, with our social emotion. This is experiential capital. How to build effective community. Cultural capital. A lot of my social emotional connection is through everyday living cultural practice, especially for the Balinese. They get it. It's easy. Social emotional learning is not something I teach. Social emotional learning is something that I inspire you to be aware. You're already doing it in your everyday life. You just need to be more conscious of it. It's not another, certificate program to teach multiple intelligence or social emotional learning. It's in my everyday process. I sit here and I listen to you, and I hear this bird chirping in the back. I hear chicken chirping in the back. That's a social emotional connection. You're sitting around with chickens running around the house. That's cool. This is a very important connection. And of course, here in Bali, spiritual capital. Oh, how I wish Ratu Padanda was here. Like the other day, you thanked me for speaking on behalf of Ratu Padanda. It gives you peace. He's also capital. So look at these type of form of capital connection to connect with all the different stakeholders. So that way they can join your collaborative network through different stakeholders. I mean, different form of capital. And so then they can also make offers as well as what did they want back. You know, a lot of people, of course, you know, they want a little bit of financial. But I think, you know, like I said, we got to look at, you know, other capital that need to be integrated. So it's not just one way of thinking. Okay. I think that's enough for today.